Moving on to the late afternoon games for Sunday. We've got 5 of these contests this week. And again, we're going to start with the game with the tightest spreads and work our way up to the largest spreads. Doesn't come any closer than this. A toss-up game. Tampa Bay Buccaneers hosting the San Francisco 49ers. There is no spread to speak of, 0 points. So, Rick, which team picks up the win in this contest?
You know, because it's at Tampa, I'm going to side with the Bucs here. Jimmy G did not look consistently good in the preseason. One game he looked terrible. Another game he looked okay. I need to see more out of him for 4 whole quarters in a game that matters. They can't decide on the backfield. They got rookie receivers throwing to. Kittle's a stud at tight end. I don't know how well the defense is going to be. They got good players up front. Is the back end going to be able to contend with Tampa's offense? Now, last year, Taylor remembered this. I thought Tampa was going to be the worst team in the league. Well, they weren't the worst team in the league. They were one of them, but they weren't the worst team in the league. Arizona just blew everybody away with how bad they played. With that said, this year I have a little bit higher expectations for Tampa. I like Bruce Arians. I like his offense. I think that offense, as long as Jameis Winston does not turn the ball over as much as he has in the past, the running game should be at least average. They tried to improve the O-line, but it's the receivers. Evans and Godwin are going to be studs. You know, it's going to be one of the best duos in the league by the time the season's done. I have confidence in both of them. I've been trying to snag Godwin on my fantasy teams. He's going to be a stud. Yes, he played at Penn State. On defense, they've improved the defense. I love their linebacker, White, from LSU. I think he can be a stud this year. I thought he could contend for the Defensive Rookie of the Year also. Even though I'm leaning towards Bush in that one, I think White's going to be a beast. I like Tampa at home. It's a pick 'em. You're going to get value on either side. I'm going with Tampa. West Coast, East Coast. That should play into Taylor's argument, and I'm setting them up right now.
Yeah, I'm taking Tampa Bay too, but it's not because I like Tampa Bay. It's more because that just feels like the default safer pick. Jimmy G, I think, will be pretty good this season, but first game back, like you said, could be a little bit of rust there. Tampa Bay does look improved. I think they're still going to finish in last just because that division's brutal, but week 1 against San Francisco is a nice matchup for them. I think Tampa Bay gets the win.
I'm taking the Bucs also. They started the year last year 2-0. They beat San Francisco 27-9 in Tampa in late November. Jameis Winston was suspended for the first 3 games last year. So in addition to not turning the ball over, he's also got to not do something to get himself suspended again if Tampa's going to be better this year. They've won back-to-back season opening games that Jameis started plus last year's game. So 3 straight seasons they've started off 1-0. So I think Tampa is the more safe pick, I guess, in this case. The default pick. I was trying to use a different term than what Taylor just used because I was basically thinking the same thing. But, yeah, I'm going to make it unanimous, just make that Tampa to win that game. Arizona Cardinals were the worst team in the NFL last season, drafted Kyler Murray number 1 overall in the 2019 NFL Draft. In Week 1, the Cards host the prolifically pitiful Detroit Lions. Detroit actually enters Week 1 as the betting favorites here. They're favored by 2.5 points. Taylor, which team will get their fan base's hopes up with a Week 1 win?
I think it's kind of like the other game. It's kind of just a default pick. I think it's the Lions. They just have more talent, all things considered, even though it's still a bad team. Matthew Stafford's an okay quarterback. He has decent weapons with Kenny Golladay and Marvin Jones. Danny Amendola's there now. Kerryon Johnson, I think, is primed for a pretty good season out of the backfield. Rookie quarterback on the other side in his first game. I think Kyler Murray is going to be decent. I think he might pile up a lot of garbage time stats, which makes him a decent fantasy commodity, I'm hoping. But Arizona's horrible. They are probably the worst team in the NFL other than Miami. So I don't like it, but I'm taking Detroit.
You know, first of all, garbage time, fantasy, David Johnson's demand for that. With that said, this is a tough game. For me, this was the hardest game to pick because I do think Arizona is going to play better than what we've seen in the preseason. I think they held back a little bit because this is an offense that not a lot of people have a lot of tape on in terms of the players that are in it right now. They might understand what Kingsbury's done in college, but when you get into the pros and got to modify it some and then you adapt it to the talent that they have, I'm not ready to say that Arizona is going to be a winning team this year, they will be a competitive team this year, way more than last season. Now to get to the Lions, here's the thing. I watched him play in the preseason. When Stafford played, he looked great. That offense is going to be much better than it's been since Calvin Johnson retired. Kerryon Johnson's going to be a stud running back. Then you go to the 3 receivers, but then the rookie tight end, TJ Hawkinson out of Iowa, Mackey Award winner last year, he's a stud. He has the potential to be a game changer in that offense. Defensively, that's where the question marks lie. They might have to win more games, outscoring other teams, which means they could be a 500 team basically. This weekend, though, I think they'll go on the road. I think they're going to win the game. However, I would not be surprised if Arizona gets revenge because remember, it was David Johnson hurt his wrist and threw his whole career off trajectory in the first game of the 2017 season against Detroit. So he might get revenge, go for 400 total yards and 5 touchdowns, and single-handedly win the game and probably play better quarterback than Kyler Murray. We don't know.
So I had marked down the Cardinals as my pick, and then I heard Rick say that he was not quite ready to say they were going to be a winning team this year. And now I'm panicking about making that selection because there's no way Arizona gets to sniffs 8 wins this year. And they'd have to get to 9 to be a winning team. So the 7 to 8 range is, I mean, unless they're playing Detroit 16 times, in which case then, yes, 7 or 8 is about right. But yeah, these are 2 of the worst teams in the NFC. No matter what improvements Detroit made, they're still the 4th best team in that division. No matter what improvements the Cardinals made, which weren't a lot, they are still the 4th, barring a San Francisco collapse, best team in their division. They are both the worst in their respective divisions in the NFC. I'd ignore this game entirely, but I'm just because I had marked it down, I'll just stick with the Cardinals, even though hearing that Rick suggests they might be 8-8 makes me think I've overvalued them because there's no way that they get to that point. And maybe subconsciously that thought had gone through my head and led me to picking the Cardinals over the Lions. But whatever, too late now. I've said it on camera. If you managed to find a betting line for this game before last weekend's news, I hope that you bet on the LA side of things. The Chargers are now 6.5-point favorites at home against the Jacoby Brissett-led Indianapolis Colts for Week 1. Rick, are you betting on the Bolts or are you betting on the Colts? Is Brissett going to find some hidden luck from within to overtake the LA Chargers?
Have we got a spread for this game yet?
6.5 points. That's all it is right now.
That's it?
That's it.
Wow.
Can't imagine what it must have been a week ago before Luck retired.
I'm a bit surprised here. I've tossed and turned over this a little bit. Brissett's not a bum quarterback, okay? He's good enough to not lose games. So what do we call that? A manager. He can be a game manager. If you think about the dynamics and the components that the Colts have, the reason they were picked to be a contender in the AFC, or at the very least win the division, it was Luck, obviously, but not just him himself. They had a lot of talent around him. They're going to have a good running game. They're going to have one of the best offensive lines in the entire NFL, not to mention just in the AFC alone. They have solid receivers, solid tight ends, and then defensively, that defense played so much better last year. They had the defensive rookie of the year from last year. His name's slipped my mind right now. He's a stud middle linebacker. They got improved all over the place with Frank Reich there. They can be a good team still. I don't think they're going to be as bad as some people are claiming they're going to be. They're surely not going to be at the depths of the Dolphins, okay? They might be 6-10 to 8-8 range because they don't have a quarterback that can win the game. But with that said, the Chargers' offensive line looked horrible in the preseason. They're missing one of their key players on defense. It's not like they're going to come out and light it up just because, they've done it in the past. And let's not forget that the Chargers are notoriously slow at starting the season. They've just been bad at the beginning of the season the last several years. They pick it up later in the year. I wish that spread was at least a touchdown because then I would say take the spread for the Colts. Since we're just doing the outright right now, you have to take the Chargers at home until you can see what the Colts can do. But don't sleep on Brissett. He's not a terrible quarterback. He can win the game. in terms of managing it, not turn it over, and he can run the ball if he needs to. I think the Colts are going to be competitive. They're certainly better than Arizona and Detroit.
They're better than Arizona and Detroit, but I think they're still quite a bit worse than the Chargers right now, even without Melvin Gordon and Derwin James. We've talked about this before. I don't think they're going to really lose much without Gordon, however long he's gone. I think Eckler and Jackson are pretty good backups to have. Hunter Henry's back now, which is kind of an underrated thing with that offense. That's a good pass catcher that Phillip Rivers can use. Antonio Gates is gone now, it seems. So I just think that Lions a little bit fishy to me. I would take the Chargers against the spread, but the fact that it is so close despite Andrew Luck being gone is kind of confusing. So it makes me kind of wonder if the Chargers are just being overvalued somehow. But, you know, you got to take the Chargers at home, even though they don't really have a home field advantage. They play in a soccer stadium that attracts thousands of road fans per game. They're basically playing 16 road games a year out there, but the talent wins out, I think, and Chargers have the talent edge. So give me LA.
Yeah, I mean, it's at least it's slightly more of a home field advantage than if they try to play a game in San Diego again after what they did. But yeah, I would go with the Chargers again in this one. I don't think Brissett is a bad quarterback necessarily. I would hope for the Colts' sake he's not. They just signed him to a 2-year extension. But, I mean, he's not Andrew Luck. And if Andrew Luck was starting for the Colts, this game would be, I think, a lot more competitive. I would then maybe consider a bet on the Colts at the very least with an extra, maybe 2-3 points on the spread kind of thing. But without him there, for week one, I can't see Brissett being the guy. I need a track record of his before I'm going to bet on him. So I'm taking the Chargers to pick up the win in this game. We got another matchup of NFC East rivals, another big favorite in this game. We already talked about Philadelphia's game against Washington. And Ezekiel Elliott has just signed a new contract the same day as this recording, in fact, with the Dallas Cowboys. But that didn't impact the spread for their game, by the way. The boys still 7-point favorites to win at home against the New York Football Giants on Sunday. Taylor, any reason to think the G-Men can upset them Cowboys now that Zeke's back?
No, the Giants have gone into Arlington and won a lot of games in the past, but that was back when they were good. They are no longer good. The Cowboys, on the other hand, are very good. I think we'll see Zeke. I imagine we'll see plenty of Tony Pollard this week as well, but I doubt it matters. Dak Prescott's better than Eli Manning at this stage of their respective careers. Dallas has the defensive edge, which you haven't said very often in this matchup over the years, but that's the case these days. They're at home. Again, not a huge home field advantage for Dallas in that building, but the Giants are among the worst teams in the NFC, and the Cowboys are among the best. So I think this one's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I have to agree with my esteemed colleague here. I will say this, though. I do think my boy Saquon Barkley is going to outperform Zeke and Pollard combined. However, do the Giants even have a defense? I mean, they had a bad defense last year. Did they add anybody to the defense in the offseason? Offensively, they had one of the worst offensive lines, and Barkley still was a beast, still led the league in all scrimmage yards and was second in rushing. If he can do that on a bad team, imagine what he can do on a team that has any kind of capable blocking and Manning, who's not, throwing the ball away or running for his life. If that offensive line can play above average or at the least average, since they were terrible last year, this game's going to be closer than what people think, because I watched their preseason games. They want to get the ball out. They want to be a more up-tempo, explosive offense, score more points. Evan Ingram can have a big season for the tight end position. Receivers, yeah, they don't have Beckham, but you know what? Beckham's missed a lot of games. He's been a drama queen for them. He's distracted them many times. Like, he did a lot for them, but he also was a pain in the butt for the Giants. Let's be honest here. This team runs through Saquon Barkley. If they can block, if they get him the ball out of the backfield, they can be competitive. I'm taking Dallas to win, but I'm not ready to say the Giants are going to get blown out this week. I think they're going to keep it close until late in the fourth quarter. Dallas will win the game.
I think the Giants are going to get blown out this week. This is a 2-team division. Will be for at least another year, probably 2. But the Cowboys are going to win. The Eagles are going to win. I don't think that, aside from the fact that they're both rivalry games, I don't really know if there's going to be all that much excitement involved in either. It'll be nice to see guys back in a game that matters, but this is a game the Cowboys If they don't win this game, the Eagles are going to win the division by 3 games. That's really what it comes down to. The Cowboys are winning this. The Giants are not good anymore. They will work their way back up. They've got some young pieces, but those young pieces aren't ready yet. Their young running back might be ready. Their young quarterback's not ready yet. That's where the Giants might actually be able to turn around, but it's going to be a year. They're going to need the offensive line retool. They're going to have that quarterback get some experience, get in there. They got to hope that Daniel Jones is worth the draft pick they spent on him and see what happens. Maybe if they do that, the Giants will be, aside from a couple of down years, to go from Eli Manning to another potential franchise quarterback. There aren't many teams that do that. The Colts managed to do it with going from Manning to Luck. The Packers managed to do it going from Favre to Rodgers. The Patriots, you could say, did it going from Bledsoe to Brady. But there aren't a lot of teams that can do that. So it'll be interesting to see for the G-men down the line, not on Sunday. Final afternoon game, Seattle Seahawks hosting the Cincinnati Bengals. That Seattle defense got a nice little boost this week, courtesy of Taylor's Houston Texans. Rick, can the Bengals overcome a 9.5-point spread to topple the Seahawks this week?
Absolutely not. Okay, first of all, there's been 2 teams I have literally rooted for my entire life: the Seahawks and the Bills. My dad's from the Northwest. My mom's from Buffalo. That's how I became fans of each team. With that said, I have followed every move Seattle's made this offseason. Adding Clowney to this team is bringing back an elite defense to Seattle. They're going to put so much pressure on the quarterback. They have one of the best linebackers in Wagner. Their secondary played great last year, considering a lot of unknowns going into the season, as they didn't have the names that we're accustomed to seeing with the Legion of Boom. Offensively, here's the big difference. They improved the offensive line. That Russell Wilson did not have a lot of time to throw last year. He scrambled a lot. Even though they've lost Baldwin, Tyler Lockett was almost a 1,000-yard receiver last year. Nobody knows about it. I think he had 10 touchdowns, 9 or 10 touchdowns around there last season. They've added more receivers, young receivers, talented athletic receivers. The line, that's the key, has improved. Number 1 rush team last year. You don't win in Seattle unless you have a great defense and or a great offense. Cincinnati doesn't have either. Okay, I like Mixon. I think he could be a stud. I love the Bengals for how they got my Bills into the playoffs 2 years ago, but there's no chance they win this game. The only way they win this game is if Russell Wilson breaks his leg and Geno Smith has to go in there. That's it. There's no way.
Did you say it's a 9.5-point spread?
9.5.
That seems low to me. I think I would take Seattle to cover that. Still one of the best home field advantages in football. The Bengals are absolutely horrible. I think the highlight for Cincinnati is they have a starting left guard named Michael Jordan. So if he becomes the greatest of all time, maybe they have a chance. But I don't see it happening. Seattle, it's not a team I love in general. Just their offensive talent, I think, is lacking. But the defense should be able to make up for it this week. Cincinnati's terrible. I don't see any way the Bengals can win this game.
Yeah, Seattle wins. That's easy. I would agree with Taylor. I think that spread's kind of short. It's one of the biggest spreads this week for week 1 of the NFL. I think that the Eagles spread might be the only one that is larger than that, just glancing ahead, looking at the Sunday night game and the Monday night game. Yeah, nope. This is the second largest spread of the week. So it's just that the NFL doesn't quite have the same point spreads as college does. But, yeah, this could be a multi-touchdown win for the Seahawks. It should be. If, acquiring Clowney, I think, puts them in the contention to be a team that might try to unseat the Rams if they do stumble this year. I think that Seattle adding Clowney, I think that puts them in the mix. They've got that defense. They do still have a couple of pieces on offense. It's not they're not.
Wilson's going to be an MVP candidate.
Yeah.
Well, write it down now.
I will.
They were a playoff team last year. Improved offensive line. His numbers are going to be even better. He had the second best QB rating last season. He's going to be a stud.
AJ Green's also still in a walking boot, so that doesn't help.
Yeah, that still hurts my dynasty fantasy team too. So not really happy about that. But I'd pick Seattle to win this game. I hope you enjoyed that segment from this week's special edition of the Odds On Favorites podcast. If you did, there's plenty more where that came from. Click on the link on your screen now to be taken to the complete podcast from this week, where we made our picks for all 16 of this week's NFL games, or check out the channel to find the other individual segments broken down by kickoff time. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the Odds On Favorites YouTube channel for plenty more sports and sports betting picks, tips, and how-to guides.